Quarter two.
29 Allen. That one is intercepted. And it's not his fault. It was in and out of the hands of Isaiah McKenzie and right into Terrell Lewis's hands. And Georgia lost the football. And the Rams say they have it. And they do. The screen. Stafford looking that way. Throwing that way. Kupp puts the toes down. In for the touchdown. Cooper Kupp does it again. Strokes it in the middle and it is pulled away and intercepted by Troy Hill. Down. And that pass is cut one more time for a first down and more. Cooper Kupp. Big stats on the night. They'll put him to the 12-yard line.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. I am a co-host, Ashton Spencer, with my awesome co-host, Zac Mayer. How are you doing, Zac?
Oh, pretty good, I think we're going to have to label this episode The Rams and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. I don't want us to overreact or anything, but I think we kind of are going to have to discuss some major concerns after this horrific defeat by the Bills.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a deep conversation. I think there are, frankly, a lot of things that went wrong in this week one game. And we'll kind of deep dive more into it as we go on in this podcast. But let's first try to get our general reactions to the game. Zac, what happened in this game in your mind, just in a brief summary, and we'll go more deep into the specific aspects of offense and defense, but what went wrong in your mind here?
So honestly, this brings back so much memory from last season, where when the offense couldn't get going, they just never went anywhere. And I really think that was the problem. Is just our offense just couldn't do anything. It felt like. So that, in summary, that's kind of where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Yeah, for me, I think our defense started off exactly where it was last year. Raheem Morris's defense is what I categorize as gives up a ton of yards but makes big plays to swing momentum. And we had that. We had that in our last game. And the problem is the offense didn't hold up its end of the bargain at all. And with that style defense, you get behind, and I think we've seen this in the last 2 years. When we get behind, we cannot come back without some amazing plays and focusing on one player. And the Bills are way too good of a team to kind of do that. So we'll kind of break it down more, but I think it's way more of what we saw last year than I think people are overreacting to. And let's both admit, Zac, this is week one. People constantly don't understand. Week one has very weird games. It is probably the most a-traditional week of the NFL. You have a lot of weird things happen. Teams aren't ready. Chemistry isn't there. A lot of factors go into week ones and why they're weird. Last year, I'll remind people, Green Bay got blown out, I believe, by the Saints. The Saints ended up not even making the playoffs, and Green Bay was number one seed. So just temper expectations. That doesn't mean the Rams will be number one seed, but what I'm saying is, you can't just adjust everything you think about the NFL based off of week one. You got to give it a few weeks, and then you'll get a full image of what this Rams team is.
Quarter one.
All right, Zac, let's go ahead and go into the game breakdown. First quarter, the Rams end up giving up a touchdown to Gabriel Davis. Zac, this is where, I would say in the first quarter and 2 quarters, it felt like Buffalo was gonna just blow open this game, and they didn't. Why do you think they started off so slow?
Why Buffalo started off so slow?
Yes.
I mean, again, like we talked about. I mean, it took them nine plays to score a touchdown, which for this high offense, um, it may seem too minimal, but I mean they were still making their way down the field. Really, it's all about this chemistry, and I think the Rams felt it too. You know they haven't played in a full season or in a full game since for the Rams it was back in February, but for the Bills it was a couple weeks sooner than that. So they're still getting their adjustments, they're still getting everything kind of aligned down, but just to go down and take nine plays and score a touchdown in the first 5 minutes of the game. I kind of thought it was kind of almost donezo at that point. They just made it look so easy for the defense. With that, we kind of described as the bend don't break mentality of our defense, and they definitely kind of broke at that point. They definitely put on a better game going forward, but that was a rough first nine plays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and over the first two quarters go over Buffalo's drives. Touchdown, first drive, second drive, interception, uh, third drive, fumble, fourth drive, field goal. So at this point, it's 10-0. Then Buffalo gets another interception after a field goal, and then they don't have a uh, other possession. So Zach, it definitely, from my perspective, is a rocky start. While they were getting a lot of yardage up to this point, it was a lot of what we saw last year, where defense was making plays, stopping them from scoring off a lot of that good yardage. Now for the Rams, this is not as good. Zach, Rams have punt, interception, touchdown, then field goal. So like our last two drives before the half, solid drives. Uh, but Zach, that's all the points we got in the game. Uh, what do you think the Rams did so wrong in not being able to score in the first quarter?
I mean, we're going to dive down into this, when we break down the offensive defense, but that offensive line was just horrendous. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't really stop anybody. Joe Noteboom, he had a few good plays blocking Von Miller, but Von Miller made his presence known, and there was just nothing that O line can do to protect Stafford. And at times I felt like Stafford might have been holding the ball a little too much. He could have ran it a little bit more, I think. But for right now, I really think that it either has to do with the play calling or all that offensive line. I think that's really the struggle of this game.
Yeah, like you said, we'll get into it more, but that O line, it was not doing great against a lot of veterans, pass rushers that the Bills have. Von Miller definitely.
And
I
I don't really like all this. I mean, like I said, we're gonna break down all this stuff, but like our defense played really well this first half. I mean, yes, you had the first drive, they scored a touchdown, whatever. But other than that, when you get two interceptions, you force a fumble, and you hold them to a field goal, like that is good defense. If you look at the defensive stat, you take out Jalen Ramsey, and we'll talk about him later. But you take out the stats looked fine for the defense. It was the offense that just struggled. And when you have your offense just continually handing the ball back to the Bills, you just bring your defense back, which your bend don't break mentality only works until you heat it up so much, and it's just going to break. It's going to get too brittle. So that's kind of my thoughts on the first half and really the whole game.
hmm let's go into the third quarter where the Rams start off a drive and they punt three and out, I believe, and then the second or the first Bills drive of the third quarter, they get a touchdown, and these four drives, two by the Bills, two by the Rams in the third quarter, are what changed the game significantly. They are they basically burst open. I believe both of those touchdowns are big chunk plays that Josh Allen threw for 30, 40 yards behind our zones. And our safeties just weren't able to get there in time to stop the reception. They stopped the touchdown, which I guess that's not terrible, but it's definitely not good. And the Rams pumped both times. Again, the offense just not being able to produce anything. The running game was non-existent. Cam Akers only got like 2 snaps, I believe. Henderson just didn't look great. He didn't have a lot of good blocking. Um, our run blocking wasn't there like it was last year. Not great run blocking, and the pass blocking was as terrible, if not worse. Uh, but basically, they go up by 2 touchdowns at this point, and then our next drive after they have 2 touchdowns is an interception, basically sealing the game for the Bills. Um, it just, what's your reaction to that, Zach? Those drives.
I mean, it's awful. You're coming off a Super Bowl team, your Super Bowl win. You're the reigning Super Bowl champions. You're at home. You have a solid defense. You have offensive weapons on the field, and you could not produce. You produced 10 points for a team that's supposed to have a high-powered offense. You have a top 5 defense, in my opinion, and you produced a 31-10 loss. Like, there were some really great plays. Like Nick Scott, I think, did an excellent job. Yes, people are going to is going to put everybody on like Josh Allen's like stiff arm to Nick Scott, but Nick Scott did a really great job causing a lot of fumbles. Forced I think 1 or 2 of those fumbles. So it's just I have to put it all on the offense. I have to put it on the coaching staff, Sean McVay for coaching the offense, and also for the offensive line itself, and even for Matt Stafford. I think he is definitely the person to blame.
Yeah, we'll get into that next segment, the offense. I'll get into my thoughts then. So, uh, in the fourth quarter, like I said, Stafford throws an interception. The Bills come back and do a deep pass for a touchdown, and this is when, like, again, by this time, I'm pretty sure the safeties are probably playing to try to get a pick or something because you have to get back in the game by pick six. You have to get a defensive touchdown at that point, especially with how the offense is playing. Um, but yeah, they throw a deep touchdown. Our very next drive, Stafford throws a high pass for Higbee. Higbee can't pull it down, and it's intercepted by a lineman. So, uh, or I think it got batted when it
Yeah, I
was
think that was
thrown,
the, I
so it
think that was
wasn't
the
high
tip
enough.
ball. The high one was for Cooper Kupp. That one went
Okay,
over
yeah,
Cooper's
yeah.
head, and
Sorry. I got my interceptions mixed up, which is not a great sentence to have to say. Uh, And then right after that, we cause another fumble for Buffalo. Again, our defense had 4 turnovers. That's ridiculous. Um, that we lost the game with 4 turnovers. The Rams end up doing turnover on downs the very next drive. By that point, the game is way done, anyways. And Bills kneel it for the win.
Quarter 2.
So let's go into our offense, Zach. Really try to break down Cooper Cup. Our offense was literally Cooper Cup. Zach, why was that the only thing that it felt like we were trying to do was Cooper Cup?
I think they were trying to start things off a little different. One of the odd things was that Daryl Henderson kind of started off, but I think that they just felt so behind that the only way that, and they did this this is games that they did this all last season where when their back was at a wall and they needed to get stuff done, it was the Cooper Cup show. Matthew Stafford is the most comfortable with throwing it to Cup. He knows Cup's going to find it and catch it and secure it. And so, Cup getting his 13 receptions, 15 attempts, 128 yards, and one TD, for anybody's fantasy league, that's a solid performance, and that continues, his streak. Um, but but then you you get to like, but where was Allen Robinson? Targeted twice, two times, and one of them he got 12 yards. So again, the only other time he got targeted was at the very end when they were trying to do a late touchdown, which really was kind of garbage time touchdown. And it was a hard ball to get to him. So I don't know. There was a lot of bad calls. I'm not really sure what was happening. Um, our offense just was not what it was last year.
Yeah, we needed to file a missing persons report for Allen Robinson because he was nowhere to be seen, and I don't think it's his fault either. He was getting open. There are plenty of plays, Zach, where I looked and I saw Allen Robinson like an easy 15-yard throw and catch, and it was like Stafford was doing the same thing. You remember in the first 6 weeks of last year, like it felt like he just wouldn't throw to Woods.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just ignored Woods for 6 weeks until like Seattle game. He just targeted Woods the whole game for a random reason. And I feel like he's doing the same thing with Robinson, and it's does such a disservice to the offense.
And I don't know if it's one of those things where like Robinson has his first look and he sees him, he can't get to him, and so he goes through his progression and finds somebody else, and then when he gets back, it's Cup is like going backwards. It's now Cup is now his like safety blanket. So I don't know if that's how it was. But it was just weird. It was weird to have Allen Robinson like not even show up. And talking about Stafford, I mean, Stafford was 29 for 41, threw 240 yards, one touchdown, had 7 sacks and 3 interceptions. Now, a lot of people are going to point to, oh, he must be having a problem with his elbow. I think that's a cop out. For people to bring that up, I think is just terrible. I think he's fine. Um, and I don't want to put the complete burden on Stafford, but he needs to make better decisions. He's holding the ball too long. Granted, a lot of those sacks came at like he didn't have time to throw the ball. Um, but come on, try. You need to spread it out a little bit and find Allen Robinson and change up the game plans if need be. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, it just felt like he was looking for Ben Skoranek more than Allen Robinson, and you just can't do that.
Yeah, Skoranek was targeted 6 times.
Yeah, you can't be targeting Ben Skoranek more than Robinson. Like that's not gonna produce success. And I'm not saying Ben Skoranek isn't worth a being or like worthy of being on the field. I'm not one of those people. I defended him on this podcast a lot last year. He has his issues, but man, you cannot be letting a weapon like Allen Robinson just sit there and not be used at all. Um, Especially when your offense is already somewhat one dimensional when the run game isn't operating at all. Um, like I like Henderson, but he's not a main back, and you try to make him a main back, and your offensive line is already not like blocking correctly. That's why we just couldn't do anything, and we constantly got pushed off the field. Not to mention, really, the first interception isn't Stafford's fault.
Right.
The
I
second
mean,
one is kind of bad luck mixed with the fact that you got to throw it a little bit higher, so it's a little bit more blame for him there. But
there was definitely questions going into this game on the Rams running back situation. I mean, we came in right before, like during the whole preseason, we had these minor injuries for both Cam Akers and Daryl Henderson, and we're like, so what are we looking at if both Cam Akers and Henderson are having these kinds of issues? Now we're back to we have Kyron Williams and we have Jake
He
Funk,
got hurt.
and yeah, right, and so we were all knowing that we were going to be running back committee, but it kind of almost, and then kind of going back to what McVay alluded to last week, it kind of made it seem like you know Akers and Henderson, they're fine. They were just we were just healing them. Didn't want to have them show off too much during training camp and when everyone can see them. And they were trying to like keep them kind of as like a
Fresh.
yeah, trying to keep them fresh and making sure people just can't see all the good stuff that's going to happen. But
No.
I mean, something had to have happened to have McVay start Henderson. I mean, I was shocked when we roll up first drive and Henderson is the running back.
Well, I
Like,
mean, it's not unusual for them. Like in games last year with Sony and Henderson, they would go drive by drive, and it was kind of random which one would start out first, depending on like what play sheet they wanted to go off of for the starting drive. I get that. It was very unusual just going pure Henderson, especially when he wasn't hot. Like it would be one thing if he was ripping off 20 or 30-yard runs every so often and he was averaging 6, 7 yards a carry. Henderson wasn't.
I,
Akers is clearly hurt.
it has to be. I mean, something has to be going wrong. I mean, Henderson was McVay's kind of safety blanket as far as receiving goes. He was targeted 5 times, got all 5 receptions for 26 yards. So not great, but also not terrible when if you need to just dunk it off so you don't get sacked. At least Henderson was a success factor there. Akers were targeted once, didn't even get the ball. Um, but the final score for Henderson was 13 attempts, 47 yards, with his longest run being for 18 yards. Cam Akers was given the opportunity to have it 3 times for no yards. So, you know, Sean
Kyron Williams also got hurt on special teams too,
very early on. I
and
don't
he's out
remember.
for 6 to 8 weeks.
Right. I don't remember if it was one of the kickoff returns in the first half that they were wanting to use him, but then he got injured, and yeah, like you said, he's out for 6 to 8 weeks. But kind of, I want to kind of quote on what Sean McVay said about Cam Akerson, or Cam Akers, and his opportunities, and he put Cam Akers has got to maximize meaning his opportunities when he gets there. No matter who you're talking about, you want to see guys do the little things the right way, compete with and without the ball. And that's kind of what I want to point it on. I saw so many replays of when I was rewatching the game where Cam had the opportunity to take one for the team and block one of the defensive linemen from getting to Stafford, but instead he like went around and Stafford got sacked. So those are the plays that I think McVay's talking about, where like you're not just a running back and receiver. You also need to make these big blocking plays, and you need to see when those blocking plays come up to block and protect your quarterback. That's one of the jobs of the running back.
Yeah, and it's unacceptable, and that's something that will get you off this Rams team quick. Is not being like multifaceted with your approach on playing your position. If you're a tight end, you gotta be able to block somewhat. If you're a wide receiver on this team, you gotta be able to block. It doesn't matter if you're OBJ or if you're Cup. You have to be able to block. And same thing with the running backs. A lot of this team's game plan is based off of play action. You have to be able to block. And if you can't do that, Stafford's going to get wrecked, especially when the offensive line itself is already struggling. You got to have help. And I think that's one part of Henderson's game that he's always been underrated at is blocking. And I think that's probably why he got more shares of the carries. And not to mention, I do think Cam Akers is hurt. It doesn't make sense to me running wise why they wouldn't give him any carries to at least just run, even if he's not blocking well.
I mean, he had a couple in the beginning and he just wasn't getting anywhere. I mean, at least when Henderson did run, he got some yardage. It was very, I don't think it was very often where he got no yards.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think, going into this week, I think Henderson is going to definitely be the heavier hand. But I do think this has to give motivation to Akers that you need to step up.
hmm
But, you know, it is what it is. You want to talk about the O line?
Let's kind of double back to the QB first and
Okay.
talk about Stafford a little bit. And this will kind of move into the O line as we talk about him. Now, I know you mentioned, Zach, that you don't believe a lot of the kind of not hype, but rumors about his elbow. I'm starting to actually think it might be a real issue. Just by the fact that it's coming out that the Rams were looking into Jimmy G, signing him if he got cut. To me, it makes no logical sense for a team if you believe your QB is healthy and can normally play through the season like he always has done, why you would look for that caliber of backup QB for no reason. Because he would be expensive.
He could be. He could be expensive. I mean, I feel like he's only expensive to the 49ers. Um,
Well,
I
I mean, he
don't.
signed for like what, 8-10 million?
Yeah, but that's to the 49ers. I mean, to stay on that team. I don't know how many teams were actually interested in him. The Rams were only going to pick him up if he was cut. Like I said, I think it has to do more with Trey Lance didn't really have a backup, and I didn't really think they had a good option other than Jimmy G, so that's why he kept him. So I don't think if it went in fruition and the Rams was trying to go after him, I don't think that the price tag would have been that high for Jimmy G. And as far as the backup situation goes, I mean everyone's always trying to find their backup quarterback. Um, I don't think Wolford is the solution. Preferably, I like Perkins better, but I think McVay and Snead are both very smart and they realize that if something does happen to their quarterback, I mean, shoot, he just got sacked for 7 times in one game. So I definitely think that there is concern about it, but I didn't see anything in this game that said he has an elbow problem. If we go into this Falcons game and he still doesn't pass balls over, doesn't do more than 15, 20-yard balls, maybe we should look at that again. But for right now, for his performance, other than maybe the overthrow to Cooper Cup and maybe, but I didn't see anything that caused me concern about the elbow based on his performance in this game.
Yeah, I'll agree. It wasn't necessarily the game itself that caused me issue. It was just that new information. It's starting to worry me that maybe they're lying about his elbow, like they lied about Gurley's knee. Maybe. We truly won't know, and we both can agree you can't really trust the Rams with what they tell you about injuries, whether they're happening or not. Um, they just aren't going to be truthful about it, and it is what it is. Let's go on to about the O line. No Boom's first, I guess, start of the season was not great. Let's be frank, guys. Um, he is before this game. I believe he was 8-2 as a starter. No Boom is a good player, but I feel like he fell for a lot of tricks that Von Miller knew. Like Von Miller has been in the league a long time, and there was like one time where Von Miller tried to do a pass rush move inside, and then No Boom stopped him, and then they showed on the replay the very next play Von Miller fakes that move and is able to go outside and sack
Mm-hmm.
Stafford. And that's something that I think a more veteran tackle will know. Like, I don't believe that's something that Whitworth would have fallen for, and that's something that you just have to get with experience. I think he has all the talent and the tools, um, but it was a bad game, and he's going to have to go through these to get better, because I know Whitworth went through a similar process in Cincinnati.
For sure. And, like I said, it's kind of unfair to Noteboom to go up against an all pro future Hall of Famer, multi Super Bowl champion Von Miller. And it seemed kind of unfair. But at the same time, you're an NFL player, you're getting paid a lot of money to do this. And that's the position you have been kind of groomed to be. And you're taking over from Whitworth. And that's, you kind of have some, you're kind of put in the spotlight there. And Von Miller definitely, knew how to get around him. And Von Miller did have a good few stops, or No Boom had a good few stops on Von Miller, like you mentioned one, and he had a couple other ones. But to allow Von Miller to get to the quarterback that many times is just, it's hard. And we'll kind of see how it goes. I mean, this week we're kind of on a day-to-day basis with Joe Noteboom. He's strained his MCL, but as far as McVay says, that he should be able to play against Atlanta. So, um,
Yeah, we also lost our center in last
yeah,
game too.
so Brian Allen,
Brian
he
Allen.
had a procedure on his knee. McVay called it a cleanup, and so he is out for 2 to 4 weeks. And so that means Coleman Shelton will slide over to center, with Tremaine Aikman Jr. will take over as right guard for Shelton. So that's kind of where we're at. And also, just coming out while we're recording the pod, that Kyron Williams has been officially placed on the IR list. So he's
Yeah,
out for an extended period of time.
so I don't know how you feel, Zach. This starting to give me 2019 vibes a lot.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
well,
if they don't do something, if they don't have a sense of urgency from this O line, Havenstein is going to need to. He's the veteran of this O line, and he needs to step up and you know get get this group into shape. Um, so I'm looking at that. But I'm not as concerned with like Coleman Shelton. He's done the center position before. The only concern I guess we would have for him is that he's a left-handed center, so that's kind of different from Brian Allen and how that's going to work with Stafford. But Coleman Shelton has done that before when Brian Allen's gone down for a game or two. Coleman Shelton's filled in that spot. And I think Ingram's I think he did some good things. I think we've seen some good stuff out of him in the past. So uh, I'm I am still going. We're going to go to Atlanta, and I want to see how this O line bounces back to this Falcons team.
yeah, I'm just happy it's not Bobby Evans. Dear Lord, I can't take another game of watching Bobby Evans. Uh,
Quarter three.
all right, Zach. Let's go ahead and break down the defense. Zach, this defense was up and down the entire game. Definitely better and more to see than the offense was. What was your takeaway, and do you agree with what Jalen Ramsey said?
For sure. Jalen Ramsey came out in his tweet when he was on the Undisputed podcast. Um, he said, "We got our ass beat straight up." He has to say that. I mean, he himself got blown up. And that doesn't happen very often, but it happens. And so to recognize that and to want to do better, I think that's definitely going to be that's definitely good for this team. This defense, I think they definitely didn't get to their potential, but they weren't also the reason we lost this game. Like we kind of went in there, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. Like normally in a normal game, that would almost mean victory for your team if you had those stats. But it's that bend don't break mentality. But if your offense just continually puts your defense into that position, your bendiness is only going to be able to be there so often until you break. So So that's kind of what I have to say about it.
Yeah, our defense kind of really relies on those long, what, 6, 7 minute drives, Zach, every so often, to be able to recoup and start making big plays again. Because they're on the field for long periods of time. Uh, Morris's defense hasn't been necessarily great on third down, but we get stops on fourth down and we get turnovers. And that's what really saved our defense last year, especially in the latter half of the year and in the playoffs. In the playoffs, they were a little bit better on third down. But in this game, definitely not. I believe, didn't the Bills have like 70% third down conversion
Yeah, it was
percentage?
it was
It's pretty
high.
high. It
Yeah.
was pretty bad. Um, Let me also point out a few uh, good and bad players. Or actually, Zach, you want to give me your top three defensive players from last week?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nick Scott needs a shout out. I think he played. Yes, I know we all know about the Josh Allen stiff arm. Got it. But I think the two forced fumbles, or the two one of the forced fumbles that he had was excellent. I think he even got on top of the other one, if I'm not mistaken. I also think Troy Hill needs a shout out. He was one of the reasons why we got um, one of the interceptions, and I think he played excellent coverage as well. So those are the two that I think definitely deserve credit. Um, Obviously, AD he plays lights out, but for Bobby Wagner's first time playing with the Rams, I also think he did a good job. Yes, he got kind of pushed by Josh Allen, into the end zone, but um, it is what it is. He's gonna dust that off. He's gonna become a better player than he was this past week. So I have no concerns about that.
Hmm.
What about you?
I really liked Ernest Jones. I think Ernest Jones is going to be a future star in the NFL. He just, and I said this on draft night, like, he is such a smart player and he makes great plays. He forced a fumble in this game. Um, he's good in coverage. I think by far he's the best drafted Rams linebacker in a while, in a good decade or two. I just think he's pretty great. I also thought Aaron Donald. I mean, it's Aaron Donald. He did great. They did smartly attack him a lot by running behind him. I'm trying to remember. A few teams did that last year. And that's something where I almost feel like Raheem Morris, when he sees them doing that, they need to do something like put him on the edge, purely on the edge, and then have a linebacker fill the gap in behind him. Like, where he's. It just. I felt like the adjustment wasn't necessarily there as much as it could have been. And then for my third, yeah, I'll go with Troy Hill too. I thought he played a solid game, probably the most complete game of all of our DBs. I think some of the Jalen Ramsey um, criticism is not necessarily warranted. He didn't have a great game. Let me put that out there. And like my brother-in-law is like, oh, people just defend Jalen Ramsey when he doesn't do good. No, I said in the Super Bowl he played terribly, even if a touchdown in that game wasn't on him. And in this game, I believe it was Gabe Davis that like ran past him, and people were like, "Oh, he got blown up and he got completely dusted." No, he was in zone, and he was expecting the safety pick him up.
Right.
Like that. The fact that he got close enough, and he was like closing in on a player that wasn't even his assignment is pretty impressive.
For sure.
Again,
And when
Jalen
you're
Ramsey still didn't play good.
right, and when you're considered the best cornerback in the league or one of the best cornerbacks in the league, you're gonna have you're gonna have this big spotlight that when a bad day happens, it's gonna show up way worse than someone who had the exact same play, but they're on the Falcons or they're on the Eagles or they're on the Cardinals. You're it's not as big of a deal until it's Jalen Ramsey, who has that big spotlight on him. I mean, he was targeted 7 times, allowing 6 receptions for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. And, it was noted by Next Gen Stats that this was the only game in which Jalen Ramsey's in his career that he's allowed 100 plus yards and two TDs. I'm again, this is overhype post first week, and I don't think overreaction. I think people are overreacting. I give it a few weeks. If this becomes a problem, we may need to readjust our thoughts. But as of right now, we should not be super concerned about Ramsey. I think he's going to bounce back. He's going to have more motivation than ever, and I think that they are going to be able to put a better front going forward.
Yeah, and let's kind of talk about the safeties. I know you mentioned Nick Scott and you put your thoughts out there about him. I will agree. I thought Nick Scott was good. He had good moments. Um, I believe there was only really one big play where he could have done something and he allowed a TD. That's gonna happen. It's some he hasn't started a lot of games as starting safety, including the playoffs last year. So I think he's doing fine. On the other hand, Taylor Rapp, Zach, what's your takeaways on Taylor Rapp, because he's just not good in coverage, honestly.
Yeah, I guess I didn't see much action from him, which probably is a bad thing when it comes down to him. Um, but yeah, I mean, we're looking at this. He only had 1 tackle, 3 assists, so he didn't really do much. So I don't know if he played better coverage wise or what. But it might be a wrap for Rap. But I think he's I think he's still going to keep playing. I don't really know what they're really going to fill that hole anyways. The safety position has kind of always been that kind of weak link, it seemed, over the last few years. Um, so I think we're going to be living with Rap for a little bit longer. So it's
I
going to be
could
like,
honestly see one of our rookies getting a chance.
and I hope so. I mean, I would love to just kind of see where that goes. And yeah, I just kind of really want to see where that goes.
What about our third cornerback? You have any comments on him, about that position? Are you surprised that they didn't really give either of the rookies a chance?
I think it was first game, and when you started getting behind so far, I think they really just wanted to rely on consistency. I would be shocked if we did not see them play in Atlanta. It was a big night for this team, and I think they were trying to play the best hand they could. It's kind of one of those things where if you I'm gonna give a coaching analysis because I coach my 4-year-old daughter's soccer team. When you're down 3 scores, you want to try to put all the best players you have in, and see if they can do something. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. So I think that could have been some of the mindset of, again, that's why they kept going to Cooper Cup is, the safety blanket. You want to try to target, what works. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah,
What about
he
you?
Cooper Cup almost scored on that 30-yard reception, I believe. It was 30 or 40. A really good reception by him.
Quarter four.
All right. Zach, let's turn the page and do a preview of the Atlanta Falcons. So the Falcons end up losing to the Saints 26-27. Very close loss. It looked like the Falcons were going to actually win it for most of the game. And the Saints end up coming back and winning it with a 51-yard field goal. Zach, what's your initial kind of reaction to this Falcons team? So a team that a lot of people counted out coming into the year, and they had a really good week one. Do you think that was just week one weirdness, or do you think they could be a kind of trap game, I guess?
Yeah, I don't want to discount anyone's team. Anyone's team. I mean, I think we've seen in this NFL that it doesn't matter if you're the worst team in the NFL. You can beat the best team on an off week. I think the Rams have a lot to prove, or they have a lot to bounce back from. Atlanta's still a building, rebuilding their franchise, and so I really think that the Rams have the momentum to win this game. Um, but but we can definitely see that there are some flaws into this Atlanta's game. I mean, yes, they were leading the whole time, but then in the fourth quarter they gave up 17 points, and that's just not something that you can do. That would have been great if it was, if the Rams did that, came back and was scoring points at the end, but they did not. So you look kind of at the players on the Falcons team. You have their quarterback Marcus Mariota.
Mariota.
Wow,
Mariota. Sorry, Mariota.
Mariota. He was 20 for 33, 215 yards, no passing touchdowns, but he did carry the ball 22 times, which seems insane. 72 yards, and he did have a rushing TD, but he did fumble the ball twice, so we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. The running back Patterson versus the Saints, 22 carries, 120 yards, one rushing touchdown. Their rookie wide receiver Drake Landon, 5 receptions,
London.
London. Sorry, man, can't read my own script. 5 receptions, 74 yards with 7 targets. So it seemed like their offense was mostly running the ball. That's how they scored and how they got most of their yards. But it's going to be interesting to see if they can get through our D line.
Yeah, this is definitely a game where I feel like we're more built to stop uh this Falcons team that is very run heavy. Like the Bills can run the ball, but they are very much aerial attack, and like we have a lot of unproven back end players. But we have a great linebacking core now. We have a great defensive line. I think we're gonna shut down this team running wise. Patterson's really good. He's still gonna get his bread. He's gonna do solid. Um, I like Drake London. I think he's a solid rookie. They should focus on him more. I'm surprised the tight end didn't get more action. Their tight end, who's had a really great rookie season last year. So the Falcons, it's a solid team. They honestly should have won that game. They should be 1-0, but they didn't. And I think I almost feel like our team has to be angry. I don't see how we go and let the Falcons. It's at home, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see how we let another team come at home, the quality of Falcons, and we just drop one to them. They could be feisty. I think they'll give us a fight the first 2 quarters, but I think we'll start to kind of drive away in the third and fourth quarter with a lot of passing. I don't think our run game's going to do much. Their defensive line is solid this year.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I was just going to ask you, how do you feel? They had 4 total sacks against the Saints when we are just coming off a game where our quarterback got sacked 7 times.
um I don't necessarily think our O line will do better. I think McVay's gonna be better about spreading it around, do more screens. You could even see some 12 personnel depending on how confident he is on the O line itself. Like you could see them kind of do that Jaguars type of game, where they just kind of bunker down, they try to get a lead, and then maybe they go back to normal stuff. But they really need this win. This is not an easy schedule, and we cannot drop a game like this.
I mean, it's definitely beneficial that this Falcons game, that each of the next 4 weeks, each of those teams have lost this past week. So, especially, those being Cardinals and the 49ers, that's definitely beneficial to us. It's unfortunate that the Seahawks are now leading our division. Um, you know,
That won't last.
so let's hope so. It's kind of crazy, but all in all, we'll make it through. I think they're going to scheme up something good for this next week, and hopefully we have some fun watching it. One of my favorite post game tweets was I don't know who, I can't remember who posted it, but the quote was, "I survived the Rams from 2005 to 2017. This is nothing." So if we can survive that, I think we can survive this one loss. You
No,
got anything else for us today?
no, man. Hopefully his team doesn't put me into depression again by losing to the Falcons.
My
But in
gosh,
all seriousness, I was pretty chill. I expected us to not win against the Bills.
I just,
Um,
I would really like a game where I'm not in like panic attack mode. I was super excited when we got to the half and it was 10-10. Like, all right, we're starting fresh. We get the ball back. We're good. And then immediately 3-and-out. And I was like, okay, well, guess we didn't make any halftime changes, and this is a wrap. So,
yeah, yeah, gotta make changes and gotta do better this next week, and I think we will. I think we're gonna have a solid next 5 weeks. Um, but it's pretty easy to see, like, the Bills are a great team, and they really wanted that win. They really wanted that win, and it just looked like we were still figuring things out. And that whole critique about not doing the preseason, that's why we lost. Like, that's so BS. Like, we haven't done the preseason in 4 or 5 years, and we've won all of our week one games. If anything, I believe we started 3-0 multiple times through McVay's tenure.
well, I mean,
So,
this is the first time McVay's been under 500.
yeah. So, it's silly. I'm happy we don't have to worry about that stat anymore, like the leading from halftime stat. Like,
The
now
leading,
McVay can just get that all off the like his head and focus on game planning and not worry about history and stuff. You just have to go in there and get the dub, and I think they will.
Yep, sounds good. All right. Well, I think with that, we're going to wrap up this great episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. You can always send questions and feedback to feedback@eastcoastrams.com or hit us up on Twitter. Our official Twitter account is at East Coast Rams, but you can also find Ashton at RamsFanAshton1 and myself at Zach Mayer. Big thanks to everyone who listens to the pod and interacts with us. It's you guys and the feedback and the discussions we get to have with you guys on social media and when we get to attend these games is what makes us fun and why we want to continue to do this and bring out good content. If you have time, please take a minute to like, review, and share this podcast with anybody, Rams fans, non-Rams fans, football fans. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Whose house? Rams house.